Hello, this is Mike at GameFromScratch. Welcome back to the ongoing This Week in Game Development series. This is for the week ending February the 24th, and this is actually about a week this time. There's a lot of news going on because we're approaching the Game Developer Conference, which is coming up next week. So without further ado, let's jump right in and take a look at the top of the stories. I'll give you a link down below for feedback of all the stories we've written here. So if you want to read the actual source material, it will be linked down below in the comments. All right, without further ado, we've got the Defold game engine, released version 1.2.97. I'm a big fan of the Defold engine. I've done a full series of it here on GameFromScratch. It's a Lua-powered 2D game engine made available by King. It's not open source, but it is free to use, and it's improving at a pretty rapid pace. Now, this particular release didn't really add a ton. It's mostly all about smaller bug fixes and improvements. Android immersive mode option was added, which is kind of cool. But for the most part, minor increases. Now, the big thing that we did see come in here, though, is that Live Update was turned on. Now, Live Update basically allows you to flag content to be retrieved later. And when I say retrieved, I mean over the network. So it allows you to basically, let's say you could build your game, say your game was 5 levels. You could ship it with just the first level and then tag the last 4 levels as being Live Update. And then when you actually need that code, it would instead go ahead and download it across the wire. It makes your initial download a lot smaller. I imagine it gives you ability to do some unlockable content type stuff. So that functionality was just added. Now, another game engine release this week was Unreal Engine 4.15 was finally released. It's been in development for a while. We've had a couple of preview releases heading up to this one. One of the nice things with this particular release is, actually both nice things about this particular release are C++ related. First off, they finally made baking blueprints to C++ an official feature. It's no longer a beta or an experimental feature. You can now use it in your game reliably. What this allows you to do is actually write your code using the blueprints interface. So you can hand it off to a designer, they can visually write their code. But for performance reasons, you could actually have it compiled down to or generate C++ code, which is then compiled, and you'll get closer to native speed. Now, do keep in mind, bad C++ is slow. Good C++ is not slow. So just going to C++ doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be massively improved in speed, but generally C++ code is quite a bit faster than blueprint code at the end of the day. Now, the other thing they've done is they've rejigged the way that their headers are set up. So now you should see about a 50% speed in compilation improvement, which is definitely nice. They also added support for the Nintendo Switch, which was or is about to be released next week. Timely on their behalf. You basically, at this point in time, any new console, you can expect Unity and Unreal Engine to support it pretty much day one. So that's the big thing in this release. There's a couple of other features in there. GPS data is now available on iOS and Android. HDR output is available in experimental state. PlayStation VR aim controller support has been added, etc. Very, very cool release for the most part, especially for C++ developers. Now, another release we had this week was Substance Designer 6 was released. Now, Substance Designer is for creating physically based rendering materials. It's literally a material creator, and you can use those materials in Substance Painter to draw things. Now, what they've done in this particular release is added 3 new major features: the curve node, the text node, and 32-bit floating point composition. Curve node, I'll read the description. Allows you to define a curve profile to remap color data. In the context of Substance Designer, you will find it particularly useful to define sculpt height maps. Text node is for exactly what it sounds like, for creating text, like literally typing textures. And then scan processing is kind of a cool feature that's been added as well. Scan processing is sort of for capturing or acquiring or literally scanning real-world materials. So you can take a number of photos and have Substance Designer turn them into good materials for you. The bakers have also been improved. One of the things that they've done is they push it up to 8K texture resolutions you can bake to. So nice release across the board there from Substance. Or Algorithmic, I guess, technically it's the company. Another release this week was PlayCanvas added a new code editor into their HTML5 game engine. I featured PlayCanvas like 2 years ago in the Closer Look at series. I need to really do an update there. But it's an online IDE code environment and game engine for making 3D HTML5 based games. This particular release brings an improved code editor. You can see it in action here. And what they've done is they've added file tabs, which is pretty much ubiquitous at this point in time, an improved go-to, enhanced keyboard shortcuts, better find and replace, etc. So basically just editing code in the PlayCanvas engine is going to be a more pleasant experience now. Another engine release, or not engine, but another game dev release this week was Nevigo released Articy Draft 3.0. Now, I actually did a video on Articy Draft 2.0. You can see it at this link right here. It shows you what it is in action. This one's kind of a hard one to explain if you don't see it, but this is one of the few tools out there that is aimed at designers. It's for doing things like mapping the progression of your game, game design. Here, we're going to go from here, branch off to these locations, these locations, these locations. You can also have the same thing applies to dialogue. So you can create entire dialogue trees, etc. Well, the cool thing with Nevigo Articy Draft 3.0 is they've added and integrated the Unity SDK directly into it now. So if you are using Unity, you can consume Nevigo data, Articy Draft data directly in your game now. So if you're creating these dialogues or whatever, so for conversation trees, you can actually hook that right into your code using this new exporter. They've also got an API so you can directly integrate and change it with your own personal workflow, and they're working on a Unreal Engine integration as well. Another game engine release this week was Cocos Creator 1.4 was released. Cocos Creator is built on the Cocos 2DX game engine. It's a C++ port of an Objective-C library, which in turn was a port of a Python library. We're talking 15 years, 20 years of pedigree on this particular package, Cocos 2D anyways. So Cocos Creator is built over Cocos 2DX, a JavaScript port of it. It is a all-in-one game engine for basically creating 2D games. Visual builder, hands-on tools are available, etc. Some improvements in this particular guide is probably the two biggest are Spine and Dragon Bones mesh rendering have been added. Spine is actually I've featured both Spine and Dragon Bones on my channel. They're both IK-based 2D animation systems. You can see, I believe this was a Spine animation. Yeah, there's a Spine animation in action. This kind of is directly now supported within Cocos Creator and other features as well. Another release this week was Inkscape 0.92.1. Inkscape has been improving rapidly. It's an open source vector-based graphics package. Recently, it's actually beginning animation, etc. In terms of commercial software, it's very similar in scope to the painting functionality of Flash or the drawing functionality of Adobe Illustrator. It's somewhere in between those two, but it's free and it's open source. And like I said, it is improving a whole lot. This one's packed full of small features and fixes and new translations, etc., and a couple of new bugs as well. Nothing earth-shattering. It's a point release, so don't expect a whole lot here, but definitely some improvements going on there. Another announcement was Atomic Game Engine has now announced that they now support UWP or Universal Windows Profile and Xbox One applications. Now this enables you to run your code. It's basically the Microsoft's replacement for Metro, and before that Windows RT. They now call it Universal Windows Platform. Now the Universal Windows Platform is code that you can write once and run across all kinds of devices, basically Windows Mobile, Xbox, Surface, Surface Table when it comes out, etc. So it's a common runtime or a common target for your code to hit. So this is going to enable you to run your Atomic Game Engine and code on Xbox and various different Microsoft platforms out there, on top of Windows, which you already have support for, obviously. Now, if you've never heard of it, Atomic Game Engine is a great little game engine. Open source, is now MIT licensed. It's a 2D, 3D game engine. You can code in C++, in TypeScript, in now recently added C#, etc. It's definitely one you should check out. I did a closer look at it, but that is getting rapidly out of date as well. Now, another release this week was GameMaker 2.0.5.72 beta was released. Again, a pretty minor release in the whole grand scheme of things, and the biggest thing that they added in this particular release was support for gestures. So you can now tap, drag, swipe, and if you're using a desktop computer, it is going to emulate a single first finger tap. So that's the big guy in here. A number of other fixes you can see are in here, and a couple of known issues as well. Keep in mind, this is a beta. It is changing pretty rapidly. Their release schedule on these releases is actually pretty solid, so kudos to them. Another game engine release this week was Unreal Release Lumberyard 1.8. Now, Lumberyard is essentially a fork of CryEngine 3.5, 3.6, somewhere in that area. what essentially happened is Crytek basically ran out of money. Amazon came in and gave them a whole bunch of money, and they got an exclusive license and open source access and all that stuff to CryEngine. CryEngine obviously being the engine behind Crysis, the game, MechWarrior Online, previously Star Citizen, there's a bit of news there, etc. So it is a very high visual fidelity game engine. It hasn't really taken a lot of traction, to be honest. There's a lot of downsides when you compare it directly to Unity or Unreal, for example. But what Amazon have done is started offering this fork of CryEngine as Lumberyard, and it's completely free. And the only real kind of caveat is if your game is network hosted, you either need to, what are the conditions? So basically they want you to use their services. Plus you're seeing each time they do a new release on this, there's more and more tight integration with their various services. And all those services are things like Twitch, which Amazon coincidentally owns. Amazon S3, which is a storage solution, and Amazon AWS, which is virtual computing in the cloud, etc. So basically what they want to do is have you run your network infrastructure in their technology stack, and in order to make that happen, they're giving you a game engine, and that game engine is getting tighter and tighter integration into those various cloud services. And that's a big thing behind the 1.8 release. Is they've added Cloud Gems, which is basically a quick way of integrating cloud computing stacks. They released 3 different actual demos that came in. I don't know if I mentioned the actual demos they did. Another big part of this particular release is they did a huge overhaul of what the UI looks like, and it is an improvement across the board, although I am really kind of getting sick of dark themes, especially for someone that actually works in daylight sometimes. These work awful on a laptop, coincidentally, or when you've got daylight on your screen. But nonetheless, everyone else seems to love these dark themes, and I will admit it looks better than it did before. They also changed the installation package to include the FBX importers, and that's about it. Now, you can read the release notes. Now, there's one thing that Amazon keeps doing that I find absolutely hilarious, is whenever you read the release notes, they always say more than number of fixes and changes. So this one actually says, 1.8 release contains over 234 improvements. 234. Who stops at 234? Why don't you just say Amazon released Lumberyard 1.8 with 235 improvements? More than 234 just sounds stupid, Amazon. Just throwing it out there. Another release this week, this one's kind of cool, out of nowhere, is Pluralsight. Pluralsight is a company that makes game development, IT training. So they were really big in the enterprise space for years and years and years. They've been around since like 2004, and what they did was, they would do things like Java enterprise coding, C# coding, Microsoft.NET coding, those kind of things, or Oracle, blah, blah, blah. And they've moved more and more into the game development space. Now, what they've actually done is they teamed up with a bunch of different developers, 3 or 4 different developers from AAA titles such as Skyrim, Fallout, Fable Legends, and Splinter Cell, and they created this game. And here you can see a screenshot of it in action. It is called Swords and Shovels, and it is implemented in Unity using Maya, ZBrush, Photoshop, and actually that's it. So it's using those technology stacks, and then what goes along with that is tutorials on how they actually did this. Now, what I do find a little bit disappointing is those tutorials are very much focused towards game environmental modeling. So basically, this is more for the artist and the designer than it is for the programmer. I don't know how much programming code is in there, because there's a bit of a gotcha on this one. So obviously, Pluralsight is a for-fee, it's a subscription-based service. You can get a 10-day subscription in order to check this content out, and I went ahead and did that. I signed up for it, and then a bit of a red flag went off because it is not an automated process. So they'll send a shot back to you. They said, we'll contact you. Then I got a response back basically saying, is it okay if I make a phone call to you? And no, it's not. Coincidentally, I don't want anyone to ever call me for the most part. So do expect to get harassed a little bit if you go down this road. I've already actually just given up on it, to be honest. I unsubscribed my email from it. I said no to the phone call request. So do be aware that there is going to be a sales pitch if you go ahead with that 10-day trial, which is very annoying. However, if you haven't already signed up for it, Microsoft actually has their Visual Studio's Essential package, which is this guy, Visual Studio Dev Essentials. It's a bunch of free tools, cloud services, and training. For you and I, basically, it's called, this is the thing we signed up for to get Visual Studio. So since Visual Studio Community is now completely free through the Dev Essentials program, as long as you have a membership or you join, again, completely free, you get access to Visual Studio. Well, one other part of this, as I scroll down very fast, is also a 3-month subscription to Pluralsight. So if you are interested in checking out Pluralsight and you don't want to be contacted by their salespeople, enroll in the Visual Studio's Dev Essentials. You get, what is that, 6 times more or 9 times more subscription for free. And I've actually already gone through this, which is why I can't do it now. And nobody calls you. You do get a couple of emails, but you know what? In this day and age, blocking emails is easy enough. And Pluralsight is actually, it's good material. It is good training material. I just don't like being cold called. I don't like the sales pitch stuff. I'm very against that. So I imagine a lot of you are as well. So if you are interested in checking out this Pluralsight training, it is a really kind of cool game. I downloaded it. It's 205 megabytes. I tried playing it with a trackpad. It was a very unpleasant experience, but aesthetically it looks very good. So you're going to see things like how to model character, how to model the environment, animation, etc. So if you want to see kind of into the AAA workflow, this could be a great one for you. Now do keep in mind, Maya and ZBrush, Photoshop are not exactly the cheapest applications out there. So this may not be for the you know, $0 budget type developers that we're talking about here. And then finally, this one is a bit of out of left news, left field anyways, is Valve just launched Steam Audio SDK. Now, Steam Audio, I don't remember the name of it, but Valve picked up a company a couple of months to a couple of years back that does audio integration. Well, this is obviously the results of that. And the simple nutshell version of it is Steam Audio is the physics engine for audio. And that's the best way I can put it. You know, when you're working with a physics engine, you have to go through and you define all the physical properties of your world, and then you let the simulation figure it out, and it creates, you know, all the movement in your world. So you do things like saying, this material interacts with the physics engine. It does so by being this solid, it has this mass, it has this level of friction, etc. Well, Steam Audio basically works exactly the same way, but for audio. So what you do is you create your world, you position binaural audio sounds in those positions, you know, so you basically got your audio sources. You go to your geometry in that world and you tag it as being listeners or interactors or whatever. So basically you say, okay, this wall, a geometry, so this mesh, which represents a wall, is a wall. It has these audio properties and it does interact with the simulation. Whereas this, I don't know, this just generic node does not have any interaction at all, so it will be ignored by the simulation. And what you do, so once you tagged all those things, you give the things properties like concrete wall, you know, etc. It is capable of doing the simulation for you. So you source your audio, so you put your ear somewhere in the 3D world, and it can calculate in real time audio for you. And it does, you know, very fancy effects. You know, reverb in the world, calculations like that based off positional audio. So if you're looking to try and get that really immersive 3D audio thing going on, Steam Audio is exactly for that. And obviously it's aimed at and probably tied to the HTC Vive VR, but it's not, by no means is it exclusive to. So you can use this for non-VR games at all, but obviously the technology goes hand in hand with VR because you're going to have head tracking, advanced audio, etc. This is a library for enabling that. Now there are other spatial audio libraries out there. To certain degrees, certain game engines actually have at least rudimentary support for this. Weiss, I believe, has 3D audio support. Fmod, I believe, has 3D audio support. So it's not new by any means, but what it is here is free. So that's definitely cool, but it is not open source, which is a little strange for Valve. Almost all their stuff is open source. And the other thing is, here are the platforms that are supported. And what do you see missing? Yeah, there's no iOS support, and that's kind of a big deal. So hopefully that's one of those things that changed in time, because to be honest, for a lot of people, that is going to be the deal breaker. You know, why would I make a game for Android, Mac, and PC, but not iOS? It just doesn't make any sense at all. So hopefully we get to see iOS as a platform coming at some point in the future. Now, as to how this SDK actually works, well, for now, it is a Unity and C API. So it's a C API standalone download as a zip file, or it's a Unity package which integrates directly into the Unity game engine. They are also working on an Unreal Engine integration as well. So that is coming soon, TM. And I've looked through the documentation. If you actually go to the linked site for the download, click there, and wait. Here we go. You'll see there's also solid PDF documentation. It's about 20 pages, tells you how to get Unity up and going. It's a fairly simple process, to be honest. Most of it's done as adding components to your mesh renders in the world for defining various different things. You have to tie into the existing audio and solution, etc., but it's not really a huge amount of setup. Or you can integrate it directly into your proprietary game engine using the C API as available here. So it's weird. There's like this releases on GitHub, and you're on GitHub, so you think, oh, okay, this is going to be an open source library. It's not. Oh, wait. Hey, what are you? 3.96 kilobytes. Yeah, there is no source. So I don't really get what they're doing here. So they got the manuals, they got the APIs, etc. You've got the source codes, stubs, but you don't actually have source code. So it's very strange for me that they did not open source this library. I'm not sure the reasonings behind it, but it's not commercial. There's no price tag attached, but it is not open source. I had a bit of a exciting moment there, but nah, that's just a stub. All right, so that was it for games. Amazingly, after a couple of weeks or months of having almost no news as we approach the GDC, we just had 20 minutes worth of news. So stay tuned next week. We're going to have a ton of news on betting. GDC tends to be where all the announcements happen, which is nice because right after that I'm going on vacation, so the timing is absolutely perfect. All right, hope you found that useful. If you did, please do click like, and of course we do news theoretically every week if there's enough news to actually justify it, or every other week or every month sometimes. But we do these news reports all the time, plus we have tutorials, reviews, you name it, all kind of things game development related. So if that's your thing, please do click subscribe, check in, hope you do enjoy it. All right, see you all later. Goodbye.